Thank you. Yeah, we've had enough tech issues already, so any questions, let's just do the old-fashioned hands up. So I'm going to talk about how ProVeg is moving away from traditional monitoring and evaluation, which requires lots and lots of work and complication, to a system that drives movement strategy. So for anyone who's not familiar with ProVeg, we're a global charity. We've got offices in like 14 different countries, and our aim is to create a world where the food we eat is good for all people, animals, and the planet. And we do this by working with different stakeholders to make plant-rich foods and alternative proteins more accessible and appealing. So I'm Laura Thomas-Walters. I'm the head of Impact. I just joined ProVeg 8 or 9 months ago now. I was hired to sort of revitalise the Impact system. A little bit of background, I also have a background in environmental activism and in academia, hands-on activism. And I was the Deputy Director of Experimental Research at the Yale Programme on Climate Change Communication before this, but left because I wanted some more impact. And I will note that of the 30 of us in the climate change communication programme, I was the only vegan there, but I still find baffling. So we're going to go through a few different things. Why ProVeg decided to take this approach, what we've done, have a look at policy in particular, because that's always the tricky one. And at the end, I'm going to try and keep my talking to about 20 minutes so that we've got time to do a sort of M&E workshop at the end and be a lot more interactive. So, why did ProVeg take this approach? I'm going to hope that by coming to this session, you are taking it for granted that evaluation does matter. But just in case you haven't been persuaded yet, it's not just about looking backward, it's about looking forward with clarity. So we need to rigorously measure our successes and, if they happen, failures, so that we can ensure all our resources are being used to maximise the number of animal lives we can save. So it's all about ensuring that our organisational strategy is driven by rigorous evidence rather than assumptions. We use evaluation to understand which tactics are the most effective, let us scale what is working, continuous learning so we can capture qualitative insights, make sure that every project is a learning opportunity. It also reinforces our commitment to being an ethical, accountable non-profit that is honest about its progress. And, of course, it helps with funding as well. Donors want to know that their money is being used to achieve impact. So we need to be able to show that. So ProVeg has been doing evaluation, monitoring evaluation for a long time, but there are a couple of issues. One being that we are a global organisation, so lots of different countries, lots of very different contexts, lots of different programs happening in different countries, which made it really difficult to get a bird's-eye view of everything. So we know, like, the School Plates program in the UK is doing this fantastic work. You know, this other, our corporate protein transition program in Netherlands is doing fantastic work. But what's our overall impact? There's also quite a high administrative burden, so there's a lot of manual reporting, and the more time that our program leads have to spend filling out spreadsheets, it's the less time they can be doing high impact campaign work. So we wanted to transform our impact system, our impact team, into a strategic partner to the SLT, our senior leadership team, making sure we could produce actionable insights that can say, look, this is where we are going to make the most progress and get the most impact for our money. So we want to empower strategic decisions, providing our clear insights, enhance the reporting system so we can give like compelling data for donor, for our partners, for comms, and really importantly, reduce workload, streamline these processes for all of our teams. So we are in the middle of launching this new impact system at the moment. I'm going to go through the infrastructure we've been creating. At the moment, we are doing it just for our big 3 international programs, which are public food, corporate protein transition, and public policy advocacy, and I can talk more about those. So the new system We're using Google Forms. We're trying to keep everything as simple as possible. So project managers and country teams will use a simple form to enter key project data and key performance indicators, KPIs. Rike is our project management software, so this can be done through Rike, which then automatically generates reminders for impact reporting based on a given timeline. So they can say, right, we want to be reporting every week or every month, and they'll get automatic reminders to fill out these simple questions. And we also include forms for qualitative wins and testimonials, and the option to nominate specific projects for deep dive case studies. And I'll come on to that in a sec. So we were using Google Sheets to collect a lot of this data, which was working all right. However, the more data you collect, the slower Google Sheets gets. It starts to lag after a while. So we're moving all our data into Google BigQuery. So we avoid any issues of like potential broken links in spreadsheets. It also means we can handle really big data sets like national procurement records or FAO data, and we can import multiple different data sources into one big database. We are trying to automate as much as possible. So we're using make.com and Google Apps Script, so we can pull data directly from things like HubSpot and Agility PR without manual intervention. So HubSpot is where we log events and things like that. Agility PR is a media monitoring service. So instead of our country teams having to report, we got 3 media mentions this week, we can pull that automatically from Agility PR ourselves, including things like financial tracking as well, and Overton, which we're using to track policy wins. So all of this will go into one central database, which is then linked to self-serve dashboards. So we're connecting our database to Looker Studio. So we have real-time tailored dashboards for all our stakeholders, SLT, fundraising, comms. So users can quickly filter reports by country or program and access up-to-date data without having to contact country leads. This is completely fake data, just to say. So this is just a preview of what the dashboards might look like, but this is completely fake data. So you can see our 2 key things at the moment are greenhouse gas emissions and annual lives or annual consumption. We'll be able to track by quarter how well we're doing, as well as over time. You can filter by different country and international programs. If you want to see how Germany is doing, you could do that. If you want to see how public food is doing, there'd be financial data attached as well, so we can get real-time cost effectiveness estimates. And then you can also get a more detailed look on programs with the key KPIs that we're tracking. So how many companies we're working with that we're trying to persuade supermarkets to change their protein split, so they're offering more less animal-based protein, more plant-based protein. So we can track all of this in detail. Again, fake data at the moment. Will be real data. In addition to all of this, we're trying to, like I said, we're automating stuff. We're trying to minimize the burden. So we're reducing the number of data points requested. As an ex-academic, it's anthema to me to be like, we need less data. But again, our teams on the ground are busy people. So we're focusing on our really high impact data points, the ones that really, really matter. So every program, we're limiting to just 3 to 5 core KPIs, a handful of mandatory global indicators, so we can then compare across countries. That also includes testimonials as well. So we're trying to encourage our teams to be talking to the partners they're working with so that we can understand, hey, public food is doing even better than we expected in the Netherlands. Why is that? We can go and look at these testimonials and see if we can get an idea of what's happening behind the scenes. We're not just automating, we're reducing burden to save time. It's also letting us buy back our intellectual capacity. So if we're moving away from the administrative tax of manual MEL, it means that the impact team can focus on what matters more, things like high-level statistical modelling, which I'll mention, and intensive deep dives. So you can go beyond, just what happened and start to look at why did it happen. Our deep dive case studies, so these are intensive looks at a specific project to understand what is working, what isn't, and why. So we use methods like process tracing, or indeed quantitative randomized control trials. So we're hoping to do a really in-depth look at our School Plates UK programme later this year, the talk of which is happening right now, unfortunately, so I can't be there. But we've got we know it's working, we know it's having a fantastic impact, but there's still lots of questions we could dive into, like if school kids are eating more plant-based foods in school, do they then go home and talk to their parents about that? Do we have spillover effects? Do they say, oh, I don't want chicken nuggets, can I have corn nuggets or whatever? There are lots of things we can look at. And by automating stuff and focusing on what really matters, we give ourselves more time to do this other work. So I've mentioned this issue of high-level impact a few times. Project teams can collect outcome data, so like the number of meals that they replace in schools from animal-based to plant-based. But we really want to see the higher level impact, things like CO2 emissions averted or animal lives avoided. That's really hard for on-the-ground teams to collect. So the impact team is then responsible for either trying to go collect that concrete data or develop back-end formulas to automatically calculate that impact from the data that project managers can provide. So these are standardized formulas that we've been developing with external experts. So if we say, 1 million meals replaced in the UK from animal-based to plant-based, how many animal lives is that the equivalent of? Or how many tons of greenhouse gas emissions? Those are our two key impact variables at the moment, but we want to expand this, so we also want to be able to look at things like suffering avoided days, land use, water use, and also health metrics as well, like the amount of fibre kids are getting. I'm going to take a second to talk about policy, because policy is always the really tricky one when it comes to measuring impact. Policy, this is like one of the areas where we can have really transformative change, but it's so hard to see until that happens. We have to manage expectations because the impact isn't always visible straight away. Policy change is often non-linear and it can take a while to manifest, and we want to know that what we're doing in the meantime is working. It's also hard to prove that a specific win, policy change is due to any one specific cause, so we want to be able to show or know how we contributed to this change. So instead of just focusing on traditional KPIs like number of meetings we've had, we've got a new approach where we are looking at, we're developing policy tracking matrix, policy champion scorecard, and coalition health and impact scorecard. I'm not going to go super deep into these now, but for instance, the policy tracking matrix, we look into like the visibility of the framing we're using. So is our specific messaging appearing in like official policy anywhere or policy briefs? The Policy Champion Scorecard is something I'm particularly excited about. It was developed by Aspen Planning and Evaluation Programme. So this is defining what does it mean to be a champion for policy change, and how do we track our progress in developing champions? So we try and like quantitatively capture a graduation in championness over time. So we grade people that we're working with according to 3 different metrics. So are they demonstrating interest? Are they attending events about animal farming, factory farming? Are they promoting awareness and understanding? Like, are they inviting their colleagues to come? Are they forwarding an email we've sent them to their colleagues? And are they advocating for improved policy and practices? How are they voting? So we can see, are we both developing more champions, animal champions, and are they doing more? And then also, no one works in a silo. We also want to make sure that the coalitions we're forming, that we're part of, are healthy and are having impact for our coalition health and impact scorecards. So one case study is our EU plant-based action plans. So this is about influencing legislators to integrate protein diversification into EU and national frameworks. It's one of our most complex programs. You know, we want to know, how do we bridge the gap between we met a politician and then policy changed. So we just did a qualitative deep dive into this topic. I'm not going to get into details of the tactics we found that did work, but I'll just mention the approach we took to look at this. So the political environment in Brussels is complex. There's a lot of overlapping stakeholders and causal factors. It's really hard to do a simple cause and effect claim. So we took a contribution analysis and process tracing approach. So basically, we want to shift away from the mindset of a statistical goal of proving what would have happened without our work, a counterfactual. Instead, focus on describing how the effect was produced, the inner workings of the change, and did we contribute to that? So contribution analysis, when you've got lots of different actors at work, it lets us credibly map out our role alongside others. So we shift the narrative from we caused this to the more defensible, we significantly contributed to this by reducing political resistance and raising awareness amongst policymakers. So we begin by mapping out a detailed theory of change, which lays out the entire chain of step and assumptions that link our activities to the political outcomes that we saw. And then we use process tracing. So this is our forensic qualitative method. So we look to see if we can find specific pieces of evidence that we call causal process observations that test the credibility of the links in the theory of change. So these can be evidence from documents or from interviews with key stakeholders. So it could be a partner confirming that a specific argument convinced a politician, or seeing our wording that we put out in a policy document being adopted by an MEP, word for word. Would be a smoking gun CPO. So by doing this, we can provide a verifiable story of impact, even when the outcome of the policy change might not have occurred yet. Also lets us learn from, is our advocacy working in this way? What can we do better? How can we tailor it to different national contexts? So as mentioned, this is all sort of on the go right now. We have selected our core KPIs for our different programs. We've run workshops for scenario modeling. We've built our core database structure, our forms, our dashboards, and we are launching the pilot next week with the full launch for all our countries by the end of May. And we want to extend it to all of our impact areas by 2027. I tried to keep my talking down a bit because I wanted to leave time at the end, first for Q&A, if there are any questions, but also to do a bit more of an interactive M&E workshop. But I'll take questions first of all.
Are there any questions? Or maybe a round of applause first.